You can now stream the forbidden documentary Occult Louisiana free on Tubi TV. Hello friends, we are in a troubling time when it comes to misinformation. The views of our guests do not reflect that of my own. This show is for entertainment purposes only, and any information presented during this show is a live-action role-play scenario. All that being said, enjoy this episode. Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Steven from BGCast. He has poured endless time and research into the spiritual and what goes on in between the lines. He is a Qigong practitioner, martial artist, yogi, and a musician. Steven, welcome back. How you doing?
Good, Chris. Thanks for having me back on, man. I really appreciate it. There's been a lot of interesting things going on, not just to me, but I think a lot of the community as of lately, so it's going to be good to talk about them.
Yes, man. It's always good to get you back on, get some updates, share your insights on everything, and you've been on a personal mission to try and hack the matrix with various spiritual and esoteric practices, or at the least gain some cool understandings about the nature of this experience. So just like you said, there's some interesting things going on. We're going to get into that. We're going to share some of your insights into the state of flux that our strange reality is in. But before we do, remind the audience just a little bit about yourself. Let them know where they can find you.
All right, guys, I am Steven of BGCast. I can be found on the Forbidden Knowledge Network with everybody else here, including Chris Matthew. I'm the podcast that covers the Great Awakening live and everything it entails. So we kind of dive into consciousness, the esoteric, the occult, conspiracies, and we also even dive into physical and emotional health as well, because I feel like the healing process that we're undergoing right now as a collective and also on our subjective path is highly important to what's happening. So you can find me there. You can find me on every major podcast platform. You can find me on Rumble and YouTube under BGCast, and you can find me on all social medias under BGCast.
Right on. In your message that you sent me earlier when I was asking you about what you wanted to get into today, you were talking about the attack on spirituality, mainly people who are spiritual broadcasters. And I'd take it a step even further and say those that are trying to share something really beneficial with people. There's a lot of people who are presenting this fake spiritual BS just to try and get clicks and make money, notoriety, fit in with what's going on right now. But those of us that are genuinely looking for answers and just sharing our experiences and insights, that is where all the shadow banning seems to be, where people can't seem to get out of the echo chambers, where you'll be stuck at a certain number of subscribers or views just because you're doing something that is true to you, it's beneficial for others. And that's not what our world is attempting to be right now. At least what those parasites in control are attempting to have us live in right now. So what do you see going on?
Well, I'm going to start off with this, Chris. It's true that it's seeming that you can't have a happy, healthy, mentally sound society. You can't do that because then those individuals are not as easy to manipulate. It's been a huge red flag to me. I've never seen it like this quite yet. I mean, it kind of all started to ramp up a little bit more after the election. I'm seeing a lot of positive, like motivational, very empowering content, not just by me, but by others who, are trying to assist and facilitate a healing to this collective at this time. We right now, that is the biggest thing we could ever need. I mean, you've even said it yourself, compassion, understanding, and empathy are those are what are going to get us through this at this point in time. So I've started to see it ramp up after the election, a lot of shadow banning on spiritual content, and the spiritual content that's not self-beneficial is still getting through, like people talking about the extraterrestrials or the new age movement, or any potential like spiritual conspiracy, anything that I think contributes in some way to the dysfunction and the diversion is still allowed to go through. But those who are trying to bring real world solutions to the table, I mean, trying to help people work through their traumas, go within, manifest the desired existence and the most abundant outcome that you possibly can. It's just been a huge red flag to me, Chris. And right now, I think the best thing that we all have to do, as far as us who are spiritual podcasters or those who are dropping really deep truths, we need to start supporting each other, because right now what's going on is we're going to get covered down into the abyss, into the even more muddy waters that we're dealing with at this point in time. And you said it, Chris, it's going to be an echo chamber. Our followers are going to get capped, our views are going to get capped, all of those after effects of this. I feel like we're dealing with a very calculated silencing, because right now, I think personally, I know a lot of people might not agree with what I'm about to say, but I think we're in a mirage. And what I mean by a mirage, I mean, we look at what happened back on, November 5th. Trump won the election. A lot of people are saying, we're in some kind of new golden age now. Everybody's hooting and hollering and kind of almost becoming attached to this outcome at this point in time. And one thing they did a disservice to, they really emphasized that your voting actually means something, which, at least in my opinion, it doesn't. But this was the illusion that they propped up even further. So now what we have is a reinstalled faith in this system that doesn't really do anything for us, that isn't truly beneficial to us as a collective. So what's happening, at least in my eyes, is we're in some kind of mirage right now. A lot of people think that we've won, this is all over, this is we're on this higher timeline, we're in this golden age right now. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm open to that. I'm not, of course I'm not damning it if that's the case, but this is all kind of facilitating and playing into what I'm talking about right now. Now, if you're not on the Trump train, you're silenced. If you're not catering to the dysfunction in the community, you're silenced. And, I'm not one, I've always been a very positively optimistic guy. You know me on that. But this is indeed some kind of spiritual warfare. I have to be realistic about it, and we need to be aware of it.
Yeah, I see very similar things unfolding. I can step back and not have an emotional investment in politics and a lot of the things that are unfolding, and see things with a different perspective than people who are emotionally invested, people who still do believe in the system. And unfortunately, I see some very concerning things. You said a lot that we can break down. Going back to what kind of spirituality is now being allowed in our mainstream, on social media, on the news, is either commercialized extreme Christianity or straight up Satanism and black magic. Those are the two extremes that are getting the views, the algorithms pumped out everywhere. And it's like we talked about before, it's like a full-on Jesus versus Satan commercialized battle. We are seeing these two polarities being propped up, but anything in between that is either moderate, realistic, or beneficial to people, and not just these extreme ideologies. Anything in the middle is considered dangerous. We're being deemed conspiracy theorists, terrorists, and all we're doing is not participating in extreme polarities that they're trying to corral everybody into right now. It's very concerning that those are the polarities we're seeing. I've never really seen this in my lifetime, this ultimate battle versus good and evil manifesting everywhere you look on TV and on social media.
Well, it's interesting, man. Anything that brings you into your own power is what seems to, like you said, a lot of the stuff that gets publicized is the supreme sensationalist religious side of the spiritual, as well as, yes, the dark magic and the Luciferian and satanic concepts as well. But honestly, the biggest thing they want right now is this distraction. And I'm going to be doing a show on this doctor. I don't remember the name off the top of my head right now because I literally just got a hold of everything. But he was a scientist in 1994, and he might have potentially truly found a way to hack, quote unquote, hack the simulation. And he ended up altering our reality. And one of the biggest things he said is they do not want us to know, the collective, whether it is the conscious collective, that we are actually direct participants in this reality. They want us to believe that we are spectators and that we have no power to change anything or to gain any kind of control. So that's kind of the reason why I see a lot of this modern sensationalist Christianity starting to rise up, and I'm seeing a lot of the dark magic and the Luciferian and the Satanism start to rise up, is because in this reality, Chris, we're presented with extremes and illusions, and they're presented to us as reality. So what they are doing right now, at least in my eyes and in my opinion, is they're throwing up this stuff in order to turn people off from potentially maybe looking at a different path or a different road. And one of the things that I've come to see, of course, I'm just speculating, but, like you, Chris, I have a long time in this and I've been looking at this for quite some time. It seems that every event that has occurred and every psyop that has also occurred has directly filtered down to the spiritual community. It has done something to us. And I kind of lay it out in a mini timeline like this. I mean, look at when Flat Earth first came out. And again, I'm not hating on my Flat Earth friends. I know I have friends that believe that. I'm just using this as a reference point, but when that came out, that drove a wedge into the spiritual community because number one, that you still to this day can't have a civil conversation about it. It never ends up pretty, and then we kind of start driving into like the events like COVID. And, COVID was one of the big ones because that itself drove a wedge in the spiritual community also. We have people like you and I who believe bodily autonomy is a very spiritual thing, that our freedom is, a very spiritual thing also. And then you had the other half of the spiritual community that kind of caved into the narrative and started following the narrative as well. So it seems that overall, yes, I can't prove it, but based on my observation and based at what I'm looking at, it seems like every single event that occurs ultimately somehow filters down to us and ends up messing us up to some degree. And in my opinion, this is very calculated because like I've stated before a few times on your show, Chris, before 2020, the conscious collective was very unified. Like, yes, we still had our petty, minute differences in ideology and in philosophy, but at the same time, we all rallied around our same common area that we were looking to see. And it seems that as the years go by, more and more things start to happen that filter down into our community, the ones who, at least we feel we're trying to bring a true message to the table, one that's going to ultimately help heal and empower the collective. So this is just what I've been experiencing. I know you have experienced it yourself and what you do as well. And this, the best thing we can do, I'll digress and I'll say, is we have to start supporting each other. We have to start lifting each other up. We have to start sharing each other's content, kind of like diving into that area also, because at this rate, the Trump Elon Musk machine is getting ready to make X into something it never used to be. X is not about free speech anymore unless you're catering to the dysfunction. You're silenced, and this is what we have to do, guys. It's kind of like almost a kind of all calls, a call to all arms at this point when it comes to what I'm experiencing, and I know a lot of other people are experiencing.
I know we discussed this before, that there are layers of the agenda, and each layer serves a different purpose. But when you step back and put everything together, it's almost too perfect the way everything fits together and comes together. And we've talked about the possibility of this all being the product of a greater force at play, even though when we're in it, all we can see is some of the darkness and the mechanisms that present themselves. But beyond that, there could be a grand intelligence putting everything together for very powerful purposes, maybe for consciousness evolution purposes, to help humanity evolve. But that's a completely different story. But what we have here on the surface level, what we are interacting with, is a very thin layer of false reality that attempts to force perspective, that attempts to force the collective's perspective into a box, into just focusing on one angle, when the rest of our reality is right behind us. But once you start to see past that very thin layer, that makes you a target, because you mentioned that the spiritual community seems to be a target of a lot of the operations. Well, it's probably just because we're the first to notice, we're the first to react, and the reaction brings attention. People who have a strong spiritual foundation, but not only that, don't get emotionally involved in any specific rabbit hole or politics or too deep in any specific topic where you can step back and take a look at everything. You tend to be aware of how things could progress maybe before most other people do. That's just because you pay attention and you have a different perspective on things. And again, I believe our perspective is the fuel for reality. It is one of the tools that creates our reality. I think another one is our imagination. That's why I believe that we're, quote unquote, targeted. It's probably more like we are some of the first ones to notice. And I'm not just saying we as in just people who have a certain spiritual belief system, but people who are connected, people who are aware, people who are empathetic and can understand some deeper levels of reality tend to be targeted by some of these operations. Or it may not even be specific targeting. We may feel like we're targeted because we're aware and because of the way things unfold.
I would agree with you, man. And as you were talking there, I wrote this down, and I think this is really going to sum it up. You talked about people who have a strong spiritual foundation, who do not get emotionally attached to anything that's going on as far as any rabbit hole or any side of the bipartisan system. We're very sovereign. We're very empathic. We have understood that our internal existence is a very big thing in the overall scope of reality that we experience. We are the ultimate threat, dude. I mean, when you really look at it, this is what undoes the matrix, or this is what undoes the societal Maya. The only way that the matrix or societal Maya, as I like to call it now, functions is through our energy, through our focus. Okay, whatever you guys have heard me say in my shows, anybody who listens to me a lot, energy goes where the focus goes, right? Or energy flows where the focus goes. And this is the ultimate food source for the matrix or the societal Maya system, is our focus. And so when you have people like us who come along, Chris, who we might not have, don't get me wrong, I would never say that we would ever have a complete understanding as of now of how things work, but we have, through our, consciousness exploration, through our spiritual foundation, we have a little bit of an understanding, or we think we do, or we've grasped onto something. We've have a few similarities that we feel are constituents to how this reality works, to, how we experience our reality and things like that. And with those, constituents and that little bit of understanding, we're a very powerful force. We've come to realize that this is the way to sovereignty. This is the way to building a new earth. This is the way to healing our collective. And right now, that could be looked at as the ultimate threat, because our energy, as who we are, I've talked about this on your show before. We're like these energetic light posts, these energetic pillars that are sitting here grounding these higher frequencies into the earth plane, through our transformation, through our alchemical work. This is how it's done, at least in my eyes. And the fact of the matter is, our energy, whether they like it or not, is permeating the collective consciousness. And in a lot of ways, I feel like this is why they do this, even though the greater collective might not have this in the scope of their awareness, is because we are essentially the ultimate threat. We're showing people that you can escape this system. You can leave this. But the biggest thing I think that a lot are still missing, and I'll leave it off at this, is this, if we are indeed in a organic simulation that we all are experiencing, if this is the case, it's done from within. And I think the hacking it is done from within. And I think that realization alone is dangerous to the control structure itself. And it's going to be a battle for us in a lot of ways, because if people, you have to think too, I'm playing devil's advocate on their side, at least right now. If our energy got strong enough, and that's why I'm a big proponent for some kind of unified front on the conscious collective for all of us in the spiritual community. Because if that in and of itself were to occur, just the mere act of that occurring, we wouldn't really have to do anything, but just the mere act of that unification would almost like be taking a giant brick to the veil and smashing a hole through it. So that's basically what we're up against here. We are kind of the ultimate threat to the matrix system, and we're downplayed as these underdogs or these people who might just be some guy doing this, but we're much more powerful than we think, man, and we need to own that.
Right on, 100%. I'm probably going to get some shit for what I'm about to say, but I really think that we need to redefine our understanding of spirituality and what this really means. Right now, it seems like spirituality is based off of a person's belief in what is possible, what's outside of our perception, what's outside of our reality, metaphysical concepts, the spirit in nature, something beyond this physical reality. What if we based our spirituality not on a possible belief, but what we know to be true, in a sense that
I like
we
that.
know how to treat a person. We know we shouldn't kill people. We know we shouldn't steal. We know that love thy neighbor works. These things we know, and it's easy to have a foundation based off of those things. But when we base spirituality off possible beliefs, that's where the dangers come in. That's where confusion comes in. I wonder if we just shift our thought process on what spirituality really is. Yes, it can be God. Yes, it can be angels, metaphysical and magical practices, but it can also be based off of very fundamental, easy principles that we live with every day, and that should be the most important concepts. What do you think about that?
I'm 100% in agreement with you, man. And even though I'm an omnist by default, if you really, if we're getting into the belief, I believe, for those of you who don't know what an omnist is, I believe that the truth can be found in all spiritualities and religions, not just a single one. So, but I've been, because of simplicity and how I do feel at my core, that this is simple. I mean, all of this complexity emerges from simplicity. You always start with that. That's why I've been gravitating a lot more towards Taoism a lot lately, because it's a very simplistic version of what's going on. It's an Eastern philosophy, an Eastern spirituality, and it kind of takes into account like everything that you were saying. And one of the biggest things I'm going to say is, yes, we need to focus on what we know, at least at this point in time. Now, I think we can separate what we know into two different categories. We can have the first category be common constituents, kind of like what I was talking about before. These common knowings that we all share in the spiritual community. We know that the path of the being the good person, for number one. All right. This is doing unto others as you would have done unto you. All of those
Don't
things.
lie, cheat, kill,
so that's
steal, man.
Don't lie. Exactly. Don't lie. Don't cheat. Don't kill. Don't steal. All of those things. Don't take or hurt from anybody. Number one, because we see that when we do unto others, that's something we can see through observation, that good things come to us. So that would be the first thing. I do think, yes, even though we don't exactly 100% know, or I can't form it into words what it is, but we do have this knowing that there is some kind of divine nature to this reality. Okay, whether it's whether it could be Gnostic, it could be Hermetic, who really knows what it is, but we do have this understanding that there is an underlying divine nature to this reality. And I think what we do know, the third thing that we know that we commonly share, is we know that this system is illusionary. Okay, we know that there is, there's always a sleight of hand of some kind of play. So what I'm getting at with that is, we always must be sovereign and have discernment with anything that we experience or anything that is brought to the table. As far as an event in our subjective lives or an event in our collective experience. So, those are things that I feel that we should bring to the table. Energy, of course, being a thing, energy flow too. I mean, even consensual science is now starting to look at consciousness potentially being a prime fundamental in the physical observable experience with the quantum physics theory, panpsychism, and now there's even more science. On my show last week in Hack the Simulation, I read an article from a peer-reviewed scientific journal that believes that the mind is a field that the brain taps into. So we are starting to see, that potentially, as far as a spiritual truth along the lines of consciousness, that could be starting to surface and that could be starting to emanate into our reality, because now we have mainstream science beginning to talk about this as well. So, whether or not they have their narrative or their spin that they're going to put on it, that's one thing, of course. But we can see that potentially one of the things that we do know is starting to be that our consciousness does create our reality. And that's something that's starting to kind of showcase itself with more and more evidence as the years go by. So I'm with you, dude. I'll digress and I'll say I think what we need to do is we do need to kind of redefine it anymore. It's redefine what spirituality is. I think really what it is in my eyes is it's a way of life. It's a way of principle. It's a way of understanding. It's not about knowing the 56 extraterrestrial races that could potentially exist, or the secret space program, or anything like that. You know what I mean? I think it really boils down to a basic fundamental way of life and a basic understanding that there is a divine nature to this reality.
Yeah, man, it is wonderful to have knowledge of the esoteric sciences and all these mystical principles, but isn't it more important just to have the ability to be a good person, have the simple principles of life as something that just naturally occurs in a person? And I was thinking while you were talking about what I am concerned with Christianity. I think it is such an important theological belief because it has so much right. But I think people have misunderstood a lot of the teachings and concepts, and what we have now, what most people believe, is a very warped and distorted version of what Christianity should be. Now, according to Christianity, if you rape someone and kill someone, rob a bank, and then the next day you go to confession and you confess all of that, you are still cool. You're still cool to go to heaven. It's all good. But say a child who is born in a third world country, in a tribal culture that will never be exposed to Christianity, but they treat everyone in their lives better than that man who raped and killed and stole will ever treat anyone in his life. Still, after he confessed and was saved again, this child lives its entire life living by the principles of Christianity, but not knowing that's what he's doing. The modern understanding tells you this child's going to go to hell because he doesn't have Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior. I love Jesus Christ, but I don't think Jesus Christ loves that concept too much. Doesn't sound too Christ-like to me. So that's the main problem I have with a lot of modern Christian understandings. It's based on some ridiculous concepts, and we need to update those understandings.
Oh, dude, you're speaking my language now, and actually this is something I specialize in. I've done 3 episodes on this because I feel the same way as you. It was actually something I became highly passionate about a year ago. I started really diving into, a lot of the Gnostic scriptures, a lot of the books of Acts that were never, released or never put in the modern day Bible. And I agree with you, man. So this is my quirk. Modern Christianity is definitely a far cry from its roots. If we're looking at ancient Christianity, we're looking at a very, and I mean very different spirituality. We had, what was it? We had 7 Catholic councils and 3 British councils that dictated the canon of the Bible. Basically, these 10 councils were all government councils that are telling you what is important for you for your salvation. They're not allowing you to find that out for yourself. And Chris, one of the biggest things I get from a lot of people who have a rebuttal to what I'm saying is they say, God wouldn't allow his word to be tampered with, or God preserved his word the way that he sees fit. Well, my response to that is this: the free will principle. I think a lot of people and a lot of modern Christians don't understand the free will principle very well. For the sheer fact is, and I'm going to use their narrative to explain this, when we fell from the Garden of Eden, we got free will. That was part of the fall. That's what was given to us by eating from the tree of knowledge and the tree of life and the knowledge of good and evil is we gained free will. So when we gained free will as humans, God's direct hand took a step back. And God went from having a direct hand in our existence, and it still does if we're looking at it from an old Christian standpoint, but to more of an indirect hand. So we got free will. So the fact that is my ultimate rebuttal to that statement is that the Bible you are reading is doctored, and it is potentially only 4% of its original. If we look even at the direct Aramaic to English translations of the Bible, and I know we were all talking about this at your house the other weekend too, when we see the Lord's Prayer from a direct translation from Aramaic, we're looking at a very different Lord's Prayer. So my thing is you have people like me who are kind of trying to break through the surface and trying to showcase old Christianity. And, old Christianity was a very spiritual belief. It was a way of life. It was more about being like Christ as opposed to worshiping Christ. And I think that's where the Council of Nicaea, and then you had the two councils of Nicaea, which they didn't dictate biblical canon as much as people think. There was a couple of things. They got rid of some early Christian sects like Arianism, which believed Christ's energy had been created since the dawn of existence. It was not something that was created later on, so they ended up getting rid of that, which is actually a huge Gnostic concept that Christ has existed since the beginning. And then you had the five councils, you had the Synod of Hippo, you had the two councils of Florence, you had a council of Carthage in there also, that these were all government councils that basically turned Christianity along with the two councils of Nicaea into the control structure that it is today, the sensationalist control structure. So, I think this was done purposefully in my eyes because, one of the biggest other things, too, that plays into this is if we look at the books of Acts that were never in the mainstream Bible, there's a book called the Acts of Andrew. Now, who is Andrew? He's a lesser-known disciple. He's not talked about in today's modern Christian circles, but he had the same abilities Jesus did. He could heal the sick. He could turn water into wine. He could cast out demons. He could do all of these things. In fact, a lot of Jesus's disciples had the ability to do this. They had the abilities to do what Jesus could do. Hence why Jesus said in many times in the scripture that you are capable of what I'm capable of. And, and that really destroyed their narrative, Chris, because you have all these disciples who can, do these acts that Jesus and these miracles that Jesus could do. And how can you turn Christianity into a control structure with that? Because you have many sons of God as opposed to just one. So that's another secret that they tried to hide from us, man. So honestly, what I do foresee happening is I do see old ancient Christianity starting to surface eventually. I've always had a theory that right now what we're seeing is the dying of the false Christ, and we're going to see a rise of the true Christ. And this will happen at some point. I do feel that eventually this will start to occur. I don't know when. But right now, as we can see, Christianity has moved so far from where it's originally been, and they use that. And they use that to their advantage. And that's how they mock us, guys. And, I'll say this before I hand it back to you. Look at a lot of Trump's following right now. Okay, look at a lot of Trump's following. They're conservative Christians. Okay, but they have idolatry towards a man who is not Christ. This is the biggest mock, coming from the, parasite class.
I wonder how many golden idols that man has in properties he owns.
Dude, I'm with you, man, 100%. But this is the biggest thing, and you've seen it too, and we were talking about it last weekend. But it is. It's almost as if they're mocking Christians right now. This is the way to mock them, is because you have. Dude, we were talking about it. We have people getting tattoos that says Jesus loves Trump, and or Jesus rose Trump.
Hey, man,
or something
in certain
like
churches,
that.
they're singing Madonna's "Like a Prayer" as a gospel song. I don't even know what to
Dude,
say.
dude, I'm telling you, man. So like, I think, hopefully that's my what I would like to see happen. Of course, I don't have attachment or expectation. It's something I would like to see, but I do think eventually what will happen is enough people, the layers of this forgetting that we're experiencing, that's a Gnostic word for it, are going to get dissipated as we continue to move forward through this strange alchemical process that we're undergoing. And then I think people are going to start looking deeper. And I do think eventually that true Christ will emerge.
Since you mentioned Trump again, let's talk about the possibility of a Trump trap. That what we're experiencing right now is a massive deception to lull Christians into this new system that is being constructed around us that we're not noticing yet. Now, I have to say this. I would never disparage the good things that this man is talking about. If he is really planning on doing some of the things that he has talked about, I welcome it. There is no way that I would wish anything bad to happen to Trump or the supporters or the party in any way, because all I want is for the human race to succeed. Again, I can step back and take a big picture look at everything without having emotional attachments and be concerned about some of the events that are unfolding and the way things are happening. Let's talk about what you see unfolding with the new Trump era that we're about to head into.
Oh man, well, this is my opinion, and I know some people are not gonna like it. So just like you, Chris, we've talked about this before. We've been observing this for quite some time. I've been observing this situation as a whole for going on, it will be 17 years next year. And I've watched this through a larger objective timeline, at least in my opinion, and there's always some kind of sleight of hand at play. And, we're going to talk 5D chess for a minute. 5D chess is a huge popular term in our community. Everybody talks about the 5D chessboard and what move's going to occur next. I found a good way to describe this, so this will lead on to what I'm going to say next. So imagine a 5D chessboard like this. You have a piece, and this piece could be a event, it could be a person, it could be a smear campaign. The pieces are up to I guess the choice of the player when it comes to 5D chess. And this piece, when it is moved, will cause a butterfly effect. Kind of a reverberation into the matrix existence that will have a succession of events that unfolds afterwards into the desired outcome that the player on the 5D chessboard is trying to achieve. So in my eyes, based on my now almost 17 years of observation of this situation at hand, it makes sense on the 5D chessboard to have two different roads to the same outcome. This is the people we're dealing with. These are I wouldn't even call them people at this point, whatever they are, reptiles, demons, archons, this is what we're dealing with at this point. And this is the thing where I feel a lot of people get lost and caught up in, is when something good happens, like right now, it's appearing like something good is happening. And like I said, I'm not negating it 100%. I'm open to this being a good thing. I think everybody is open to it, but when you've seen this as long as we have, Chris, we know that there's always some kind of sleight of hand at play. And this is where I think, a lot of us, what we need to do at this time is, not play a Randy Marsh and start drinking and partying in the streets going, woo, change, or, woo, golden age and all that. Yes, like, enjoy, this little bit of whatever we're in. We're still in apocalypse when, that's great because we have more time to lay the foundation for what we need to do later down the road. But just observe peacefully without attachment because, guys, I'm telling you, I've seen this trend throughout the now almost 17 years I've been looking at this. If it seems too good to be true, it most likely is. And right now they're portraying a lot of things, like, oh, we're going to remove the fluoride from the water. We're going to make America healthy again. And me, the person that I see, I know that these fast food, these sugar industries, all of that have their hands and their pockets so deep in Congress right now that, for anything like that to occur, it would definitely take some massive overhaul. So I do think we're in a mirage. I 100% agree with that, and that's the term that I've used to describe what's happening right now. It's a mirage. What we're seeing is it looks like it's something's there, but it's truly not. And I don't want to burst people's bubbles. But this is just my opinion. This is what I've seen over the course of observation. So I think we just need to have our discernment on high, Chris, throughout this whole time. And we need to really be looking in between the lines and not allowing us to get caught up in these egregores of the surface level stuff, that continuously try to loop people back into this dysfunction.
You said something earlier that's very important. The amount of power that we have just by what we're participating in, just by the choices we make and the way we view things. The more of us that check out of being emotionally invested with politics, with parasitic anti-human systems, at least propping them up and participating with them, the more we check out of that, the less fuel that system has to perpetuate itself and affect our perception to where we create their reality. And that's another part of this, I think, is what it's really about, is at the top, whatever intelligence or force is motivating them doesn't seem to have a divine creative ability, and it needs to manipulate us to manifest this reality. Because in my current belief, I believe that our collective perception is what forms our baseline reality. Depending on where we're at collectively, what events have unfolded, and what we are choosing to align with is going to dictate where we're headed as a collective. And of course, our individual perspectives play into this. Each person, as they become more aware, it adds to that collective fuel and awareness, and it can dramatically change the direction that we're collectively headed. So there's the attempt by the system to keep the system running.
No, I'm with you 100%, man. I do think that whoever or whatever, is potentially trying to keep this system running or keep the matrix or the societal Maya system going, it is devoid of creative ability. It is devoid of any kind of spirituality. And it's the biggest power grab. They want everybody to think that we're merely spectators and not participants. And that, that might not seem like much in the way that I say it, but we are participants in co-creating this reality. And how do we create this reality? Through our train of thought, through our mindset, through the content we consume, through the beliefs that we take in. This is what I call these the tools, right? Like you have a hammer and a chisel, right? That basically creates this reality. And what you're creating into your subjective reality also starts to overlap into the collective reality as well. So this is how they do it. They get us to manifest their outcomes for them. And how that is done is how we buy into their story. That's the best way to put it. If we start hopping on the hate trains, we start hopping on the narratives, and even a lot of the mainstream conspiracy narratives too, man. A lot of these mainstream surface level theories that are now being passed around, all it is to me is it's giving more loosh. Okay, it's handing out more loosh to this force that wants to take and use our energy to create its outcomes for it. So that's why I've been really big on, again, I've said this before in this episode, getting the conscious collective, which is our community, on some kind of unified front and not arguing with each other over stupid, petty, minute things, at least temporarily, for the sheer fact is when we're doing this, one, we're giving this force exactly what it wants. We're not being organized to any degree. We're not being productive to any degree. The other thing it's doing too is it's contributing to their outcome. And the biggest thing that we can do is start to develop and cultivate the understanding that you have an immense amount of power within you that can shape and shift reality. And you are a contributor to this reality. You're not just sitting in a spectator seat. You have tools available to you. And this is the biggest thing that they don't want us to understand, because if we all continue to start understanding this and more and more people start to understand, their system is going to start to fall apart at the seams because nobody's going to be giving it the focus. And that's why I 100% believe viral things started to come into being, like things started to become viral. For the sheer fact is it puts back into this system. It's absorbing our focus. This system is completely driven by energy. And I think this is something that not a lot of people are really willing to admit, because we've been conditioned to think everything is hyper complex, from our health to the solutions that can help fix our current situation that we're in today. We've been conditioned to think it's all hyper complex, but in reality, it's simple. We stop giving it energy, and over time, more and more people stop giving it this energy and this focus, and it will wither away and die. And I think one of the biggest things that's hard for a lot of people to come to this realization is a lot of people are still very afraid of change. And, we have a lot of people who have subconsciously, in a lot of ways, and this is why I say we need to really focus on our subconscious programming when we're starting to heal ourselves, is subconsciously become comfort in the way things are. We've become comfortable in dysfunction. And that, will cause a fear of change when it comes to overriding a lot of what's happening to us today. But the one thing I could say to that is, guys, you have the power to manifest a joyful, abundant, amazing existence for yourself and your family and your loved ones. Okay. And this is the power that you have. Why give it away? And this is the biggest thing they don't want you to know. So I'll leave it at that, man. We are immensely powerful. Our thoughts create timelines and ripple dimensions. Our purposeful intention shifts and shapes reality to our will. We're very powerful beings, and that is something they want to keep from us, because they know that if we stop creating the reality for them, it's a game over.
At times I think that they are ready to give up, because this thin layer of false reality is getting shittier and shittier as time goes on. It's even the entertainment isn't even entertaining anymore. The things that used to keep us focused and engaged are just ridiculous now. It's getting harder and harder for people that are becoming aware to participate in some of the nonsense that's out there. Social media, television, our entertainment industry, politics, education system, healthcare. It's all becoming so shitty that it's pushing people out of it. And it's almost like, is this intentional? Is this just gaslighting and presenting us with all this toxic nonsense so that we opt to check out of it?
Well, now that you bring it up, we've chatted about this before. It's like all the actors are getting tired of acting. They're they're like they're like, come on, man! Like, do you not see this? Like, this is getting ridiculous. I talk about this dream I had, and I do think that it is in relation to what's going on right now. I had a dream a couple months ago that I was in some other dimension and I was talking to these three talking heads and they were like embedded in the dimension, but we were having we were laughing and we were having a good time. I don't really remember like the whole conversation, but they turn around, they look at me and they go, "Oh, it's going to be so obvious that it's stupid." And then I looked at them and I was like, "What do you mean by that?" And they're like, "Oh, you know what we mean." And then I ended up waking up, but I do think that's in referral to what you're talking about. It is. There are things that have become so obvious at this point that it's getting harder and harder for people. And I've seen it too, like, and it's starting to register with some of the general collective, which I think is pretty cool. But people are looking at this like, what the fuck is going on? Like, what kind of clown world are we in? We've heard this saying like multiple times, and it's starting to become thinner. And I think over time, people like us are going to start seeing it first. And the best way I've described it is those who are asleep, they will not notice it until the very last second. That's the kind of buildup that we're dealing with, I believe. They're not going to notice it until it is so downright stupid, and we're all looking at them with the Willy Wonka face, going like, do we see it now? We see it now. Okay, good. But it is. It's gotten dumb. I mean, especially when we look at a lot of the stories they're getting to try to get us to believe. They're looking. I mean, even the whole fake alien invasion thing they're trying to pump out right now, or they keep trying to bring back. It keeps failing miserably because people are now looking at this situation from an objective point of view, and they're like, and also too, what did them a disservice was they shot down, supposedly, I think it was, I don't remember what year it was, but it was recently, where they supposedly shot down two of these identified flying objects. And that didn't do them a service at all, because if they were really UFOs and they were really a technology that we don't quite yet have yet, we would have not been able to take them down. So in a lot of ways, their narrative is starting to fall apart. And this is why I think they've started to pull the reverse Uno card, and we're in a Mirage at this point in time, so people can start to buy back in. The guy that they supposedly got rid of the woke agenda, which was something that was turning a lot of people off. They got now Elon Musk as the billionaire everybody hero worships, now sitting in the president's cabinet. We have all of this too good to be true la la fluff being thrown at us right now. And I think this is like I said, it's a reverse Uno card. It is falling apart at the seams. So now they have to start pulling out everything that they can to get us to buy back in, because if we don't, then it's game over for them.
Stephen, this was wonderful. Thank you again for coming on. Always enjoy our discussions. Before we go,
definitely, man,
let everyone know where they can find all your content. If you've got anything interesting coming up you'd like to talk about.
Awesome, man. So this Wednesday, guys, I want to bring this up. I'm doing something that I at least thought it was impossible, and a lot of other people said it was impossible, but I want to promote this show. Every time I've been on Chris's show, I haven't really promoted a particular show of mine, but I really want to promote this one for the sheer fact it's going to be very big, despite it not seeming very big. So this Wednesday at 6:30 p.m., I will be having a subsection of my podcast called Common Ground. So you guys know me. My personal philosophy is anarchism. It will always be that way. But I will be sitting down with a man who is left-leaning in nature. and I will be sitting down with a woman who is right-leaning in nature, and we're going to find common ground. What we're going to do is we're going to try to bring back civil discourse and dialectic back to our collective, because this is where it starts. This is where the healing begins. As you've heard Chris say multiple times, the only things that are going to get us through this is compassion, empathy, and understanding. And this is where it starts. So I had real success with this a few weeks back. I had two super progressives, is what they called themselves, on my show, the Brothers Blue. If you guys want to check out that episode,
Super progressives.
But super
Why
progressives.
do I get nervous
I know, this
whenever
is what they
I
call
hear
this.
that?
Dude, and trust me, I was at first, but dude, it blew my mind. We walked away from that conversation friends, with more respect for each other and a deeper understanding for how we felt about the world and these things. And now those two guys watch my show on a regular basis after that. So this is where it begins, man. So I would like to invite all of you to BGCast Common Ground. We're going to start healing this collective, 2 people at a time, but this is very powerful, because what I'm doing is directly fucking up what they're doing, and that I take serious pride in. So please, definitely come check it out. But of course, you guys can find me on the Forbidden Knowledge Network at forbiddenknowledge.news, where you can find me and a whole bunch of other great podcasts. Check out the documentaries too. We got the Forbidden Knowledge documentary part 2 coming out. We have Clockwork Shining, these new docs coming out, guys. Definitely support those. And of course, you can find me on all major podcast platforms. You can find me on every social media under BGCast, and you can find me on Rumble and YouTube under BGCast. And again, Chris, thank you, man. It's always cool to come on and talk to you, my good friend. And I look forward to seeing what the future holds for the both of us.
Yes, sir. Thank you, brother. This was great conversation. We'll definitely be doing it again. Until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening. We'll talk again tomorrow. See you then. We live in an incredible age of information. More and more, we're discovering that we've been lied to and misled about much of our human history. Cory Hughes is providing profound revelations about World War I, World War II, the JFK assassination, Martin Luther King's assassination, and much, much more on his new Substack, Bloody History. Subscribe now for as little as $5 monthly. Just click that link right in the description to get started now and learn about our true history.